You are now tuned into the most epic, most loved, and most hated 13signsastrology.com. I thank you for listening and I thank you for watching. We make movies on this particular channel, on and off camera. Before I get into this segment episode, I want to take a moment of silence for our brother Nelson Mandela. And in actuality, we should have been took a moment of silence for our brother Nelson Mandela. See, that's what I picked up in my channels and in my meditations, because I did a meditation based on this whole subject, I'll call it that, of the death of Nelson Mandela. Now, before I get into the meat of the video, I just kind of want to talk about one of my favorite sayings that Nelson Mandela didn't coin, but one of the sayings that he was popular for teaching us. And Nelson Mandela, the brother, taught us that if man can be taught to love, then man can be taught to hate. He further taught that hate is not something that a child or a man or a woman comes into the world knowing about. Hate is something that's taught. That's right, hate is something that's taught, meaning that you have to come up with propaganda and disinformation in order to get a group of people to hate on another group of people. And I just kind of want to point that out there for, the haters out there. Nelson Mandela was a very epic brother, very extraordinary brother. According to the 13 signs chart, he would be a Gemini. And he was definitely a speaker, very popular, won the Nobel Peace Prize, known for a lot of things. But you got to ask yourself this, and this is not getting into conspiracy theories or anything like that, but this is my views. You got to ask yourself, why now? That's right, I said, why now? Why choose to report the death of Nelson Mandela now? And many people would say, well, Nelson Mandela, what are you talking about? His family saw him die and he died. That's basically what it is, and just let the man rest in peace. What are you talking about? You trying to come up with another conspiracy theory now? You got to understand the way the world works. Nothing, when you become a public figure, you get into politics, or whether you get into Hollywood, or whether you get into the film industry in Australia, or in South Africa, or Nigeria even, nothing in politics happens by coincidence. Everything is planned out. The world is a stage. That's right, the world is a stage, and I'm here to educate and teach the youth about how this world stage works, so that when you get on it and when you find your place in it and you find your mission in it, you will become the best actor. That's right, you got to become the best actor. Everything is a script, and the individuals that run this world do things like clockwork, and they don't miss and they won't lose. Many have tried to go against them and try to throw a monkey wrench in their plan and try to sabotage the things that they do, but they don't lose. Why? Because they plan things out sometimes 50 years in advance. You got to ask yourself, a man that was so powerful like Nelson Mandela, so radical even like Nelson Mandela, this man was a prisoner and went and got free from prison to become the president. You think that happened by coincidence? You need to start researching and studying the history of a lot of your politicians. You'll find out a lot of them were criminals and prisoners and actors before they got on the world stage. This is because in order to make it on that particular stage, this is not corporate America. This is not some working class industry. We're talking about politics here. And it takes a certain quality of individual with royal blood. But not only that, but a person has to go through something to make it to that stature. And Nelson Mandela went through it. 27 years as a prisoner and then made it to his freedom based on circumstances I'm not going to go into here, because even there's an occult aspect to that, to make it to his freedom. But what I'm here to talk about quickly today, and it's not going to be long because I'm still paying homage and paying tribute to our brother, is that this is the death of the trust of Nelson Mandela. That's right, I said this is the death of the trust. See, I've been talking about trust even before this happened. And this is a name. Nelson Mandela is a name of a trust, a very rich trust too at that. And they left clues for you to let you know that Nelson Mandela, from my views, died a few years ago. And I'm not going to reveal the date that I was able to tune into in my meditations and find out about, because it's not really even about that. It's just about, I want to show you something. I'm like, let me show you something here. What I'm trying to show you is that when you get on this stage and when you get into a seat like that, you become a trust. You see, a trust can be basically considered a dead person. Remember, I told you that. And it's no different with Nelson Mandela. A lot of money was made off of his trust. I'm talking books. I'm going to get into some of the films that was written off of him. All this information, the media made all of this money off of Nelson Mandela, even before he became the president. So this is the death of the trust of Nelson Mandela. Now let's get into the films that were made. See, this is where the clues come in at, because why in the past 6 years did they start making films about Nelson Mandela? And why did they just make a film 7 days prior to his death? Why did they release this film called Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom, which was based on a book about his autobiography that he wrote, and they made this film and released it 7 days before he dies? There's no coincidences even in the universe. You see, the ETs, or whatever you want to call them, the beings that run this world, because they're more than just men and women. The beings that run this world, the entities that run this world, plan everything out in advance. Why 7 days before his death was a film released on November the 28th? Why? Why on Thanksgiving? I'm not going to do a video on this, but how does this tie into some of the other deaths that you've been hearing about? One of the voiceovers for The Simpsons died. One of the brother Paul Walker died in Fast and Furious. What is this all about? This is a play playing out. The comet icing, even though it burnt out, ties into this. And I might do a video on that. I might. People ask me to do videos on things, and I'm really particular. You notice that Ram Hotep, I could do a video after video after video if I was just a conspiracy nut. Because, I mean, I could show you some stuff that I won't even show you here, because I respect the occult, and I respect secrets being sacred. And people have to earn this knowledge. See, I got some jewels here that I could offer, but people, you got to earn this knowledge. But why now, though? Why now? So what I'll go into is a few of the films that were made in the past few years based on Nelson Mandela's transition. And one of the first films that was made, it's actually 4 of them, but I'm going to focus on 3, because one of them was a television film that I won't really too much get into, but it was Sidney Poitier. But this particular film called Goodbye Bafana, which was released in 2007. That's one film that was centered around Nelson Mandela and his relationship with the guard that stood over his prison, and the white man that basically was over him being a prisoner at the time, and the relationship that they had, and when he was released. But everything in Hollywood is esoteric. Why is it called Goodbye Bafana? Why was it released in 2007? So that's one aspect. Then another thing is you have to point out is right after that film was released, Nelson Mandela was on a terrorist list. Why was he taken off the terrorist list in 2008? These are just questions that I won't answer here. Why was he taken off the terrorist list in 2008? You see. Then in 2009, Morgan Freeman, very key here, releases or acts as Nelson Mandela in Invictus, which is dealing with the soccer championships that take place in South Africa, and how it got popular there. So he plays Nelson Mandela in Invictus. Why are these films being released all these years later about Mandela in Hollywood? See, there's a secret to that I won't get into. And then you have another film that was called Mandela de Klerk. Mandela de Klerk is the film I was telling you about. That's the television film, so that's different. That was released in the 90s. And it ties into this, but it doesn't, because it wasn't really a blockbuster Hollywood film. But the last film that was released is Mandela, the film called Mandela that I was just telling you about. And this was released November the 28th, 7 days before his transition. This is because, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you this much information. A name is a trust. And when you get into the status of being a trust, when you become a public figure, everything about you is ritualized. To the point where even if that man had died 5 years ago, they're not going to just tell the public. They're going to make it a ritual. Your birth is a ritual all the way up until your death. Why? Because they know that the Matrix is a stage. And it's based on astrology. That's why I try to tell you guys. And they look in your natal chart. And they look at your script. Your natal chart is your script. You see, and the people that run this world, the entities that run this world, they function off of astrology. Yes, they know very much about astrology, as well as other magical occult sciences. Even to get into Hollywood, you have to have an understanding of the occult. You have to be initiated into one of the occult schools. This is because everything that happens in Hollywood is a stage. All deaths are usually released in threes. You see, I wrote articles about this when I did the Whitney Houston article. You notice that all these people just started dying right around Thanksgiving, which is a harvest. So we could say this is the sacrifice of the trust of Nelson Mandela. That's right, the sacrifice of the trust of Nelson Mandela. And you have to ask yourself, who's benefiting off of it? Who's getting money off of it? Who's eating off of it? Why they choose to do this now? What's going to be, a lot of money's going to be made from this. You see, I follow the money and I watch the money. So I'm just saying all that to say that don't get caught up in the hype when you turn on the television and watch TV and think that things just happen to happen. Hollywood is a piece of wood, a magic wand, and they wave this wand and they make movies on and off camera, reality TV on and off camera. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and shut this video down. Paying homage to our brother Nelson Mandela and the trust of Nelson Mandela. And until we meet again, I'll leave you in Hotep, Namaste, peace, and definitely love.